Usha asked Pete Wallace and I to make a little presentation on the history of the first women in Rotary. Pete's traveling this week and wasn't available to be here, so I hope I speak well for both of us. But a little personal history. First, I was raised in the 50s and 60s when women's rights were only starting to be mentioned. Carolyn and I were married in 1969 when women's rights issues were being raised a bit more frequently. One evening, we were discussing the domestic abuse shelter founded by Pat Meyer, who had become a good friend. Our son's Eagle Project occurred at the shelter as well. Carolyn said that the abuse victims should do well to learn to say to their abusers, "Go ahead, but remember, you gotta sleep sometime, sucker." At that moment, I decided that women's rights moved way up on my list of priorities. And those here who know Carolyn know that it was a wise decision. In the mid-1980s, women's lack of access to male-only social business service clubs groups was unfair. I agreed with this point, and so did the Supreme Court on May 4, 1987. Rotary in the United States was ruled to be not treating women fairly. I had heard there was some concern that admitting women to this club could maybe cause some disruption in some otherwise happy families. But as I looked around at our group of old men and their fathers, I felt no concern about potential hanky-panky. Among many women leaders in Iowa City, two women stood out to be obvious omissions to our membership. Peter Wallace recognized the contributions of Sister Mary Venarda, longtime CEO of Mercy Hospital, a major employer in Iowa City. She was very well known and respected by the business community for her dedication to health care in Iowa City and a perfect candidate for membership in our Rotary Club. In our business life, Carolyn and I were called on by a bright young lady from the Iowa City Press Citizen who handled our advertising account. We were very much impressed by her professionalism and business abilities. Mary Steer rose rapidly to become sales manager, then publisher, when J.C. Hickman, the current publisher, moved to another state. Now, we always had access to J.C. when we liked or disliked the positions his paper took on issues. When J.C. left, we felt we no longer had that access. I felt that was a problem pretty easily fixed. So Peter Wallace and I nominated Sister Mary Venarda and Mary Steer, respectively, to membership in our Rotary Club. They were quickly approved and became valuable members who have led the way to the vibrant and vital membership who have made such a difference in our city and our world. This would not have been possible without those of you who have followed Sister Venarda and Mary Steer. My wife Carolyn has been president of the Downtown Rotary Club, and our relationship is the only hanky-panky that I'm aware of.
So I got my break in life because of John and Carolyn Gross, who hired me as a consultant, business consultant, way back in 1990, when I didn't know what Rotary was at all. So thank you, John, for those remarks. May I request Linda Mustin to come forward? Her presidency year was 1993 to 1994. And here are the general questions I have asked each of the female past presidents to address, and they can address anything, any which way, like our goat riding. How did it feel to become a female president of our club? Who made the ask? How did you prepare for your presidency year? How do you feel today as you look back into the past? What is a primary trait or resource that each club president could aim for or seek out? Is there anything interesting, a Rotary moment, or a story that you want to share? And they have only 4 minutes. Thank you.
there going to be a stop sign? Well, fast forward 7 years from 1987. It was said, come hell or high water, there would never be a female Rotary president in this club. Well, in 1993, both happened. Water poured over the Coralville spillway for the first time, exposing the fossil gorge. And when I became president, some might say that the fossil gorge of Rotary was also exposed. Rotary membership was not one of my personal goals, but I welcomed the opportunity to be part of an organization that I knew well. I had attended Rotary International when Ray was president, and at that time I was a Rotary Ann, and that's the way we wives were designated before 1987, and it lapped over a little later. 24 years ago, there was a head table down at this end, and there were long horizontal tables. There were some smokers. There were a fair share of off-color jokes. The summer picnic at Bill O'Lean's was kind of a guy thing, and there was an Oktoberfest for couples at Pleasant Valley. 2 meetings were held that year off-site. The board deliberated the future of the Rotary camp in Coralville, the beginnings of FAMSCO, polio eradication, and shipping used medical books to Africa. Dick Johns led a process to award District 6000 flood assistance cash grants to non-Rotarians. There were 286 members, and attendance was closely monitored and strongly encouraged. Karen Hughes was the first professional secretary. George Droll, Nancy's late husband, was treasurer. Howard Sokol, news broadcaster. Frank Pearsall, song leader, and Tom Davis, limerick writer. There were often warnings that Bob the cop, the University Heights' only patrolman at the time, had set a speed trap outside. Each year, the election was conducted with a ballot of candidates listed for each leadership position. Consequently, any Rotarian who was elected president was chosen from 3 nominated. By the time I returned to my office on club election day, my CEO, Rick Breon, had already received a call telling him I'd only won by a couple votes. If you were a member of this club in 1993, would you please stand and be recognized? Who was here in 93 as a member? Okay. Okay, I want to thank the 1/3 of you who voted for me. In 1993, I was also busy as a Mercy Vice President and enrolled in the Executive MBA program, and that summer my family surprised me with a Labrador Retriever puppy. So if some of the details are not clear, then I hope you understand. It was heartening, as it is now, to have the support of Rotarians who made eye contact and supported me with head nods. No one stood outside saying, "Ditch the witch." And the presence and participation of women had already started to tame the jokes and adjust the songbook language. The energy and involvement of women was starting to enliven Rotary's work on the club and the international level. Now, Ray was uniquely qualified to cope with my role. More than one Rotarian said it was okay if I served, but they wouldn't want their wife at Rotary. Ray was a good sport, even when a New Zealander gave him a ribbon at the International Convention that said, "Wife of the President-elect." When Ray was president of ICAD, prospects from Asia were fascinated by my Rotary membership, yet certain that would never happen in their club in Asia. In the 90s, at Home Hospitality in Australia, England, Singapore, the issue of female membership was still quite controversial, and our Snowbird Club in Destin got newspaper headlines for admitting their first woman in 2005. For me, being a worthy president of this club had nothing to do with gender and everything to do with advancing Rotary service. My response to it, even as some of the women ask me, is like it's not really a big deal. But recently, our Rotarian son, Chip, referred me to Malcolm Gladwell's podcast on revisionist history. Sometimes, Gladwell says, the past deserves a second chance. Now, with the perspective of years, I've decided being the first female president of this club was a big deal, a really big deal. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Would you like to run the last 3 meetings that I have to? Those were great jokes. And thank you, Ray. I mean, I can see why you could be very supportive, to new things. Thank you. I think our next president is Karen Franklin. Oh, Ann Parker. Did I do the list?
No, it's correct.
Oh, it is correct. Okay. Ann, please come on over. Which year were you president? 2005-6.
Yeah. Thank you, Usha. I served during Rotary's centennial year of 2005-2006. And I attended the International Convention, which was held in Chicago that year. So I didn't go to any of these fun, exciting overseas places, but that's all right. We had a tremendous time celebrating the 100th anniversary of Rotary, which I feel very fortunate to have been able to do. Eleanor McClelland, I don't think she's here today, is she? Darn it. We were roommates, and that was a lot of fun, spending time with Eleanor. There were several others there, and I won't list who that was because I will invariably forget someone, and I will feel badly about that. As Linda mentioned, at the time we did ballots, and there were 3 names on the ballot for president and then, of course, the board of directors. I don't think we were doing secretary and treasurer at that time because we had more permanent people doing those things. But I was asked, and I don't remember who asked me. I'm sure Gary Pesha may have had something to do with it, so thank you, Gary. But there were 3 names, or I thought there were 3 names on the ballot, and when it came to voting day, I had said, yes, I'll do this because being on the board, which is a requirement to be president, I knew that they had struggled to get people to put their name up. And so here I come walking in thinking, oh yeah, no big deal. I'm serving my club by giving them my name to put on the ballot. Lo and behold, my name was the only one on the ballot. So I guess you didn't have much of a choice. There may have been some write-in names. I don't know. I didn't ask. But anyway, I was happy to serve from there on. In preparing for my year, I spent a lot of time coordinating the committees, which is kind of what the president-elect did at that time, or at least my friend Steve Hedlund, who was president ahead of me, asked me to do. So maybe I was dumb enough to just say, okay, I'll take that on. That was a huge commitment, but it was good to do because you learned about all the committees. You got to meet the committee chairs, you got to choose individuals as well, and then putting people on those committees was kind of a big thing. So I started that in January, so we were ready to hit the ground running July 1st. And I owe an awful lot to Steve for letting me do that and for being my guide as I went forward. Eleanor also gets a lot of respect from me as well because she was my right-hand person and did an awful lot, kept me on track and reminded me of the things that we needed to do. Again, Gary Pesha was right there. Arlie Clemens, Arlie, I don't know if you know this or not, but you were a huge help as well. So was Roy Justice, and I have a special spot in my heart for Jim Clifton, who was on the board at that time, and he was a huge cheerleader as well. Looking back into the past, today's club is a little bit different as we continue to evolve and expand and grow with our newer members. When I joined in 1996, it was my dad's club. There weren't a lot of women. There were some, but not a lot of women. And Janice Sweet had asked me to join. And I thought, oh, well, someone's asking me to do this. So, okay. I'd known about Rotary because I am a 5th generation member of this club. as a Rotarian, and so I'd kind of grown up with it, but not really knowing a whole lot about it. So when I was asked, it was okay, I'll do this. So jumped in with both feet, came to this meeting. As Linda said, the head table was literally a head table up on risers at the end of the room, and people were there. Pete Peterson was the president at that time, and I'm grateful for the things that he has done for our club as well. The history of our club really is important, and keeping some of those traditions alive is really good. I know some of the youngers probably don't understand why we do some of the things that we do, but there's a reason behind it. And with that, 102 years of our club being involved, we've got some stories behind us, and they're pretty interesting. If we had more time to chat, I could tell you more about that, but we'll save that for another time. Some of the things that I would suggest that all of us and future presidents do is asking older members for advice, especially the past presidents, and why we do the things that we do. Again, those traditions coming forward. But talk with newer members and find out why they have joined our club. What are their goals for being a part of Rotary? How does this align with Rotary's goals? What do they want to get out of Rotary, and what do they want to be able to contribute and to do? And I think that goes towards those that propose our new members as well, coming together as a group and really making things happen. A little bit of a Rotary moment or a story to share. When you join Rotary, you are always told that everyone is on a first name basis. And I thought, that's great. Here I've got this whole new group of friends, and a lot of them, again, sorry, Dad, they were your friends, a whole generation older than myself. And here's, the little female coming into the group and trying to run this club week by week. And I have to tell you that Dr. Donald Conlon, and many of you know Dr. Conlon, he was my pediatric dentist. And I had a really hard time approaching him as his nickname, Pinky. That was a little tough for me to do. I couldn't call Dr. Conlon Pinky, but anyway, bless his heart, he was a good mentor. The many friendships that I think you make through Rotary, yes, it's about the projects, it's about working together, it's about making the world a better place. But there are so many people that I probably never would have crossed paths with, not having Rotary. And Gary and Nancy Patient are one of those. In fact, Nancy's mother, Mrs. Graham, was my second grade teacher. Pete Wallace, who of course is not here today, has been a huge mentor for me, especially these last 10 years working on our Get Moving for Healthy Kids program, which you've learned about in the past. Who else can I tell you about? Charlie Gay, Bud Houghton, Uncle Lee Butheris. You older members will remember that name. Jim Lowe, John Hughes, Bill O'Lean, Bob Downer, Dick Johns. I'm going to forget somebody, so I'm going to stop with the list right now. But all of those people have made such a difference in my life, but also in Rotary, and accepting women in and making it a wonderful place to do good in the world, which is really the basis, I think, of being a member of our Rotary Club. I think one of the most rewarding, challenging, exciting things that I've been involved with was helping to plan our club's centennial. That was huge for me, and especially because my great-great-uncle was a founding member of this club, and later my great-great-grandfather joined as a member. And being a fifth-generation member of our immediate family has been huge, and Rotary's a wonderful place. So I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad you're all supportive of one another. That's what it's all about. It's not a male-female thing. It's working together to make the world a better place. Thanks for being here.
So one thing I actually noticed just now is that was the year that you had a female president next year too? Like me and Tice? Mm-hmm. You were president and then Maggie Mary? Cool. We've had that only happened 2 times.
Has it only been twice?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so double pleasure. Maggie Mowry is our next speaker. She was club president from 2006 to 2007. Before we forget, can we have all the Rotarians rise who were present at Anne's induction or during that year you were members in 2005, 2006?
I'm standing.
I was a member too at that time. Cool, take them out. Okay.
They must have all voted for me because I was the only one.
Only.
Okay, I'm going to make this short to try to get the next 2 on. Rotary changed my life. I joined 30 years ago. I was living in Fort Dodge. I was in charge of, I was director of the senior center, the foster grandparent program, the retired senior volunteer program, and a lot of people would come and have coffee with me. And I didn't know anything about Rotary, and they would talk about Rotary. And one day, Jim, I can't think of his last name, Jim said, "Why don't you come with me, Maggie, to Rotary?" I said, "Okay." And I got there, and I knew people. And so I ended up in that 87, 88 joining. Folks, I had no idea it was unique for me as a woman to come in. These were all my professional buddies, and I went to church with some of them. I partied with some of them, and it was just like, it was no big deal. But I got in there, and then the significance of that club, I said, "Where can you go?" Because it was on Monday noon, and somebody could tell a joke. They were pretty clean. At that time, we said a prayer, we sang a song, and you had the most interesting programs I had ever participated in a group on a regular basis. Fast forward. Oh, I should say this too. Bruce Shimkat, who was the owner of the Chrysler Dodge car dealership, was the pianist. And I razzed him when I went in there. I said, "I am not joining this if you ask me just because I play the piano." So that was my joke at that time, late 20s. Okay, so fast forward, I moved to Iowa City 20 years ago. It's Rotary that introduced me to the world. It was a Rotarian in Fort Dodge that told King Hare, he's deceased, that I was here. King Hare picked me up and took me to all 3 Rotary clubs and introduced me. Herb Wilson jumped all over that when he found out I was a musician. He jumped in and said, "You got to come to the Prusel School of Music and listen to." I said, I was here like a week. I said, "Okay." And so I go to a recital at Prusel School of Music. Fast forward, Doris asked me to join Rotary again, so I came in that vehicle. And then a little bit later, it was Ray Mustin who asked me if I would run for president. So that was the hook. Gary Pasha was significant help, support. Herb was significant help, and so was Ray. The other component, which I should have said before, because I said it changed my life, is that lady that's going to speak next. She called me up one day. We were just Rotarians. This is before the presidency. And she said, "Do you want to go to Barcelona with me?" I said, "Sure." So I went to the international conference with Karen Franklin, and that literally changed my life, even more significantly. So what I want to leave you with, it's relationships, and you stated it, it's connections. You can go anywhere. You can say, they judge you for how you look, what you say, what you do, and then you say you're Rotarian, they go, "Oh, so am I." It changes your life if you let it. Thank you.
Okay, this is the time when I ask for permission from my club members. This is too exciting an opportunity to give up. There are 2 more speakers. I will give up my time slot because I have a farewell speech coming up on June 22nd. I'll cover my story. Can you all stay for another 8 minutes, please? Thank you. So our next speaker will be Karen Franklin, who was president of our club from 2009 to 2010. And I believe you had several other district positions too, right? Would you tell us that too? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be back here. Well, I joined Rotary in 1991 at the invitation of Jane McCune, and thank you, Jane. At the time, I had no idea what I was getting into, and I had no idea how important Rotary would become in my life. But after being in Rotary for a little bit, I did learn that women in Rotary was a relatively new thing. Linda Mustin mentioned Rotarians, which was kind of this adjunct cookie makers part of Rotary. But shortly after I joined in 91, then Linda became president in 93, so I thought, it's just, that's history, that's ancient history. Or was it? Well, I'll relate a little story, and it wasn't when I was president, but a few years after I got into Rotary, I got active in FAMSCO. FAMSCO, for you younger members or newer members, is the Fire and Medical Supply Company. And it's a group in which we would take medical supplies, fire hoses, turnout gear, stuff like that. We'd put it in big cardboard boxes. We'd load it onto a Huey helicopter or a semi-container, and it would get shipped off to Latin America. And we always did this in some dirty warehouse someplace. It was kind of burly, dirty work. So of course I fit right in, being burly myself. Well, occasionally we would have was board meetings, essentially. The people who were central to FAMSCO would have meetings to talk about the future of FAMSCO. And so we would meet at a member's house, and it was all very nice. We had this meeting at a house in, I think it was in the Quad Cities. And the wives of the guys were there because it was guys. I think at that point I was the only woman who was in FAMSCO. And it was a lovely evening. We had drinks, we had something to eat, and then the business meeting was going to start, and so the wives invited me to join them in the other room while the men met. And I thought, ooh, Rotarians. So it takes a little bit of time for things to change, but they do change ever so gradually. So I became president then. It was after Linda's presidency. It was 12 years before we had another woman president, Anne, and then Maggie. At the time I became president then, it was like, okay, a woman president, it's not particularly noteworthy. We'd had 2 district governors that were women, Diana Reed and Susan Herrick. We haven't had a Rotary International president yet, you may have noticed, who is a woman. To become Rotary International president is a very long slog. You have to have been a club president to be district governor. And then to get into the Rotary International realm, that level, requires that you be a district governor, that you get into zone activities, and you work your way up the greasy pole, which is a term that I understand is very common in Britain and Australia. I got that from an Australian Rotarian friend of mine. So it takes a long time, and it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment for a man, it's a big commitment for a woman. It'll be interesting to me to see if a woman ever does reach that point in the Rotary hierarchy, just because of that. But in our district, I think we have done quite well. When I was president, we had 63 clubs, and there were 26 women who were presidents of clubs at that time. This year, there's 64 clubs, and there's 27 women who are presidents of the clubs. So that's about 42%, which is okay. That's good. So I don't think you think about it that much anymore in terms of a woman being president. I think something changed too that kind of helped us along, and I will invoke Mr. Pacia's name again, because I think he has some responsibility here. So you might want to blame him if you don't like all this happening. When Linda was president, it was a slate, in which you voted for one of many. I don't know about Ann's circumstances, whether it was just nobody else came forward, but I think it had evolved by the time I became president that there was a slate presented to the membership, and that for president there was one candidate, and then you could get nominations from the floor. So that made it a little bit easier, I think, for women to reach those leadership positions. And I think that was Gary Page who did that. You know, as I look back, as I was preparing for this, and I'm going to not say everything I wanted to say, but just kind of move through here. I found, because I was looking for some history, I don't keep all my old files, and so what was happening during my year would rely upon my memory, which that's not going to happen. So I did look through some old email, or not email, but documents that I had on my old computer, and I found the remarks that I made when it was the gavel passing and Bernie Kremers was going to become president of this club. And I have to say, I was really struck. It reminded me what a great club this is. So much has come out of this club in terms of ideas that have become district projects. FAMSCO was one, Iowa Most, the Hecotepec project, I Can Read, and then the Ponseti project was one that was beginning and evolving when I was president. And it's not the president that does that, because I don't think any of those projects are ones that were initiated by presidents in their particular year. That they were initiated by people, individuals within the club who had an experience, who had an idea, who became impassioned about it and made it happen. So that the job of the president is to be open to ideas, to encourage that kind of change that needs to happen to have these projects go forward, to be familiar with the funding sources that you need to start a new idea, and then, of course, to encourage that service above self. But I think the characteristic that also is useful for a president is to have a sense of humor. The work that we do in Rotary is hard work, it's serious work. Making the world a better place is serious work. But it's really important to have fun doing it. And I have, and I thank you.
So our next speaker is Thijs Winkelblack. And for all of you who want to hear my story, come here on June 22nd, okay? Thank you very much, Karen. Thijs?
Hello, I'm going to be super brief because I'm still fresh in the minds of many of you, for good or for bad. So I just want to say thank you to these women who clearly I've ridden in on their coattails, and they made it so easy for me to know what a woman president would be like and should be like, and also to so many of you, because as with previous comments, many of you I was able to call or schedule a wine date with or a coffee date and get great advice from, and just continue to be mentored both in my Rotary life and in my professional career by so many of you, men and women. And I would say also to all of you who are sitting there thinking, why would I ever want to be president? Because it's a lot of work. I gained so much more than I gave. It is a lot of work, but I think anything that's worthwhile tends to be that way. So if you haven't considered it. I think that, we'd love to hear from you, and you won't even know the ways that it will help benefit you in your life. So consider presidency, consider service to your club, and thank you to all of you, and congratulations to my fellow women past presidents and current president.
So we've come to the conclusion of this part of the program, and this is a meeting I hate to end. It is such a nice conversation. We need to have these conversations, and I will see whether all the people who spoke today could keep their notes somehow organized still and keep it with you, because maybe we should run a session with women presidents around the district. I would love to hear these same stories. I actually don't do well in gendered intersections. This is not what I think about. But I came to know about it mostly because as soon as I changed my LinkedIn profile to President-elect on my site, the chairwoman of Women in Rotary in Australia, Kerry Conhauser, contacted me and said, what do you think as a woman in Rotary? And I was like, what should I be thinking about this? So in any case, as we conclude our program here, I would like all the women, female past presidents, to come up to the podium, as well as the people who are serving on the Rotarians Supporting Women Committee to come up as well and help me recite the four-way test. Ryan, I think you're also on this. Can somebody take a picture when everybody's up here, please?
Some of you come this way. Some of you come over here.
LaShonda and Christina, are you coming too?
Mike McKay.
Okay, Mike McKay. Anybody else? Well, more people are, well, we could all be here, So could the group please rise and help us in the recitation of the four-way test? In everything we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Our Rotary meeting is adjourned.
Nice job, lady.